are included. Right, all those in favour? Any opposed? Cool. Councillor Turner, would you like your vote recorded? Yeah. Cool. Cool. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to congratulations, team. Thank you. We've got item 13. We've got council submission on the National Direction Package, Infrastructure and Development, Primary Sector and Freshwater. We have had some conversations about the breadth of work and changes to the RMA. Now, I do understand everyone has access to the slides and the information. I'm sure you've read as much as you can. The team won't be going through all the detail like they were going to if this was at 2 p.m. like they had hoped. So they will do their best, and please ask questions if you need clarification. Thanks, Karen.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Karen Kirk. I'm from the Strategic Advice Unit, and I'm here with my colleagues Megan Howard and Dave Allen from Natural Environmental Strategy and the Infrastructure Strategy team. So the government released 4 discussion documents and is inviting submissions on proposals to amend national direction under the Resource Management Act. The package includes 2 national policy statements, one on infrastructure and one on natural hazards. Today we're just going to present our draft submission on the first 3 packages. But there is a discussion document on package 4, Going for Housing Growth, which is on a slightly different time frame. So we'll bring a report on that to the 14th of August committee. I should say submissions close on Sunday. In terms of the submission itself, we've got some, we shouldn't. Thank you.
Just pointed at Sandra with 2 R's. Maybe the other way. Oh, there we go.
There we go. We've got some general themes that we've highlighted, some overarching themes. The changes are expected to transition into the new resource management system, the government's phase 3 reforms. However, the extent to which this will be possible is a bit uncertain at the moment, because each of the packages addresses matters that are relevant to achieving the purpose under the current RMA and not the different framework that will apply under the new legislation. The changes are intended to reduce regulation by enabling specific activities. So there's a definite shift towards the economy with a greater focus on enabling infrastructure, development, primary production and economic well-being. I should say some of the changes are supported, but others we feel don't achieve that balance between enabling flexibility and environmental protection. So there's a need to get the balance right. Also, the national policy statements are all of equal value. There's no direction on prioritisation or how to resolve conflicts. So there's still unresolved tensions between enabling growth, housing and infrastructure development and the necessary environmental safeguards. And system integrity, the changes proposed override existing plan rules, and this has the potential to create some inconsistencies in how different activities are treated with similar effects. So we flagged that in our submission. In terms of Māori interests, I would say it retains the status quo. It doesn't add to the existing expectations under the RMA. So I'll now pass to Megan, who will talk about infrastructure and development.
Thanks, Karen. Kia ora. I've just got some brief comments on Package 1. Package 1 is infrastructure and development, and it includes 8 pieces of national direction. Half of those are new, so we have new national policy statements on infrastructure and natural hazards. and new national environmental standards on Papakainga and Granny Flats. We also have amendments to some existing national direction on renewable energy, electricity networks and telecommunications. A group of that national direction applies to infrastructure and utilities. In that space, council needs a resource management system that works for us in both of our roles, both as an infrastructure provider and as a regulator of infrastructure. What we're getting through this package of national direction is very enabling of infrastructure, and we are generally supportive of that. That is pretty aligned with what we have in the unitary plan to date. However, we are concerned that it goes too far towards the economy and infrastructure and away from the natural environment. Also under this package, we have 2 new national environmental standards relating to dwellings, one for Granny Flats and one for Papakainga. We support the intent to deliver or to enable more housing, but we see a number of risks in how they've approached these national environmental standards, and we have some suggestions about how they can be managed. In particular, there are some risks around the management of natural hazards, in ensuring that we have sufficient infrastructure capacity, and in relation to council liability around these new permitted activities. And finally in this package we have a new national policy statement for natural hazards. The national policy statement asks that we approach natural hazards in a risk-based way and that we control it in a way that is proportionate to that risk. We're generally supportive of that direction, and we just have some suggestions about how that could be strengthened for Auckland. And I'll pass on to Dave for package 2.
So package 2 is the primary sector package, and that includes a range of instruments that are all up for amendment, including the National Environmental Standards for Marine Aquaculture, Commercial Forestry. There's also a desire to free up development in the coastal policy statement, as well as looking at how the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land is done. And then there's some regulations that relate to stock exclusion and mining and quarrying in and around areas of high biodiversity and wetlands that are also being put up. So the intent here again is generally to enable primary sector growth and productivity. And I guess the key thing here is we're highlighting there's a number of issues with how they've approached that and the impacts on some of the environmental values that are actually affected. So if we just look briefly at these, just bearing in mind the time, the concern from staff here is that the Auckland Unitary Plan is actually set out better to address some of the aquaculture issues than the quite prescriptive scenarios that have been identified in the next iteration of the NES marine aquaculture, and so we've got some concerns about how it's framed versus what we've actually got in place in the Auckland region currently. We generally support the enabling of aquaculture activity, particularly in existing areas. We have some concerns about how they're proposing to categorise activities for new areas and new space. They're trying to make it permitted or controlled activity for some aquaculture activities. We think that that's a bit blunt, and we might need restricted discretionary activity status to actually ensure that some of the risks that are identified associated with research and trials in the coastal marine area are addressed. And we specifically identify that the proposal to allow farming of Undaria is inconsistent with the regional pest management plan in the Auckland region, so we've opposed that particular proposal. So, as I said, we support a lower test for allowing consent changes to occur, but it's really about how that's done. We think that that would be appropriately done under a restricted discretionary activity. For commercial forestry, there's a desire here from central government to remove a lot of the flexibility from councils in terms of how they manage the risks associated with forestry on the natural environment. So we've indicated our opposition to that, but also opposition to not requiring management plans to be provided to the council to help with us in terms of our compliance, monitoring and enforcement activities in particular. But we do support moving to a more risk-based approach for how slash management is managed. And we also support some technical changes to the provisions for this particular NES for commercial forestry. We are concerned that some of the controls for earthworks and sediment are not necessarily best set out, and we would like to see a bit more focus on that in this particular NES. As I said at the start, the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement is up for a bit of a review, and central government consider that some of these activities are not able to be undertaken without some restrictions as a result of the provisions of the Coastal Policy Statement. And the intent here is to liberalise that, to make these activities more possible to undertake. Some of these proposals have a link to Package 1 proposals for renewable energy and the NPS for infrastructure. The functional need test is currently quite an important element of the Auckland Unitary Plan, and it actually does ask the question about, are there practical alternatives that an applicant should consider beyond the functional need test. And we do not feel like the operational need test, which is proposed to be introduced, should be introduced by itself without some qualification as to how that should be undertaken within the Auckland region or any region really. Again, you know, there's some room here to enable this sort of activity. We're not saying no completely, we're just trying to find the sweet spot in terms of how this is proceeded with. And of course we also support some activities associated with agriculture, enabling Māori to undertake their activities within settlement areas, and also to better consider environmental and cultural benefits and policy aid for agriculture. One of the other things that Watercare highlighted in late advice to us was that they were keen to go further in terms of allowing some of the infrastructure to be provided for despite biodiversity values that might be in the coastal marine area. We have not gone as far as that. I think we need to just have a bit more of a check about how that's actually undertaken, and some of that will be better considered probably further down the line with the rest of the council departments involved in that discussion. The proposals here for land use capability is to remove LUC 3 from the NPS, highly productive land, to help enable urban development. And the concern here is that this will lead to risks associated with a loss of our highly productive land, which has been something in 2019 this council strongly advocated for retaining, and we've continued with that approach in terms of ensuring that high use capability land class 3 land is retained. If government, however, still wants to take that out, we're suggesting that inefficient land uses like subdivisions, lifestyle blocks, may be things that you would not want to see in land use class 3. You would want to see intensive urban areas as opposed to sort of inefficient land use like a lifestyle block in such areas. The removal of land use class 3 also enables, not enables, but creates a lot of fragmentation in terms of how we manage rural production activities, so that's the other concern we have. So in the draft submission, there's quite a lot of analysis that's been done by Ryan Bradley to depict what has actually occurred in terms of the loss of rural production land to date, and also noting that this has not really benefited in terms of the urban development outcome that government seeks to achieve. So that's another important element to consider. And the other thing just to quickly note is that if the alternative proposal that I put up is about creating special agricultural areas to try and protect some of these remnant areas of rural production, we think that that's a short-sighted approach. There are other areas beyond sort of the Pukekohe area that are important in terms of rural production. So there are places like Omaha or further up north that are important to consider as well. So just quickly to note that we're also seeing some merit in integration across quarrying and mining in terms of some of the interpretation and definitions, but we oppose quarrying and mining being undertaken in or around wetlands or significant ecological areas or highly productive land. Stock exclusion regulations, we've gone with a proposal that is largely enabling some efficient activities down in the South Island. It doesn't, what we've proposed, or the proposal that we've agreed with does not have a major impact on the Auckland region. A lot of the stock exclusion that's required will be in relation to threatened species and making sure they're protected. So turning to package 3, which is freshwater, this includes amendments to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management and the National Environmental Standards for Freshwater. Again, quite a few things that are under consideration here, so I'll just quickly go through these. The main one I think to consider is that the NPSFM 2020 introduced a single objective which has a hierarchy of obligations in terms of what we should be thinking about in terms of how we look after freshwater. The proposal is to consider changing that. We've said that we'd like to retain that as our first choice. Second choice is that we would remove the hierarchy of obligation and clarify how Te Maro Te Wai applies. That's the least problematic way of addressing some of the challenges we already have in the Auckland region to looking after our freshwater. There's a number of other things, technical amendments to simplify and add further flexibility to the national objective framework as well. That's just a slide that sort of speaks to some of the commercial vegetable production activities and the pros and cons associated with one way or another in terms of how we cater for this through an NPSFM or a NES, and in terms of what are the pros and cons of approaching the issues, but I won't cover that in any detail. Water security and storage, we don't propose supporting this because the provisions in the Auckland Unitary Plan are sufficient for the types of activities that are occurring in the Auckland region. In terms of the wetland provisions, there's some simplification and clarity that we're looking to offer some comment on, and then be more targeted in terms of how we can identify permitted activities and consenting pathways around specified farming activities that occur in and around wetlands that are low impact. We're also looking at removing induced wetlands from the definition of natural inland wetlands. And fish passage provisions, they're also been looked at. We've compared them to what we have in the Auckland region, and we've made some comments there about those issues. Some simplification in the farmer-facing regulations, we support those. We don't oppose the removal of the nitrogen cap. It's the only way we've got to really assess what is occurring with the application of fertiliser in the region. And we would also be looking at how farm planning can assist with sort of some of these provisions looking ahead. And lastly, the drinking water sources mapping. The council submitted in 2022 to support the mapping of these areas that have been identified, and we've pretty much gone consistent with our previous advice. I'll leave it there and hand back to Karen.
Yeah, in terms of next steps, I think it's important to note that there'll be no further consultation on package 1 and 2, and the changes will have immediate effect once it's gazetted. The government's expecting to have new and updated national direction in place by the end of this year. However, we will see an exposure draft of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management and the National Environmental Standards for Fresh Water. So we're expecting further consultation in late 2025. And of course, the Going for Housing Growth proposals are expected to be implemented in phase 3. So that's the end of our presentation. If there's any questions.
Thank you. That's, again, a huge amount of work in a very quick way in a constantly changing environment. So thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, look, thank you. You've done a huge amount of work here, and I hope you're not surrounded by people around the table that have almost lost the will to live because it's so late in the day. So you've answered some of my questions, but I have a couple. Starting with the infrastructure one, paragraph 9 refers to possible perverse outcomes. Can you give an example of a kind of perverse outcome you're anticipating here?
Can we just clarify, Deputy Mayor, paragraph 9 of which document for the submission?
Are you referring to the question 9? Is that right?
I'll come back to you because I've just written notes and I need to go back and have a look at the agenda to double check. But okay, I'll keep going. Same on the same infrastructure package bit. Can you explain what you mean in practical terms in paragraph 33? How are costs being imposed on council by the government's proposed change here? Because you're talking about permitting greater height and bulk of electricity assets as a permitted activity.
Okay. That was in relation to the National Environmental Standards for electricity transmission.
Look, Chair, if this is really hard, I'm happy to sort of send the questions through later. I don't want to make this difficult for you. I've just obviously got some questions I want to ask. The next one is a pretty controversial one. It's cell towers. So in paragraph 33, what is the proposed submission? Are we opposing this or just asking to have input where cell towers are to be put up?
Very sorry, could you repeat that one?
On the cell towers, right? You refer to a change to allow cell towers anywhere in the road reserve and higher than currently. So I'm really not clear what you're proposing. Are we opposing this or just asking to have input where cell towers are to be put up?
Is Alina online? So Alina was leading those ones. I'm just wondering if she is available for that question.
No, she's not online.
That's
I'm
right.
happy to send
Otherwise,
them. If you
I
can't
can
answer, I'll
take
send
them
it
away.
through.
Thank you.
I suppose, look, and my Papakainga one was answered by you. The land use 3, I'm not really sure why this doesn't achieve the intent the government thinks it does.
So perhaps I'll ask Ryan to chip in here. Please, Ryan.
Yeah, sure. Ryan Bradley here, lead planner from Plans and Places. Essentially what we're saying in the submission is the government's aim is to open up land for housing, and the idea behind it is that LUC3 land has been holding up housing. And we've done an analysis of all the future urban land in Auckland, all the private plan changes that have come in over the last 5 or 10 years, and essentially LUC3 land has not been responsible for holding up any development of that type in Auckland. So in terms of if it was removed, it wouldn't actually open up a whole lot more land for housing. We already have a lot of land identified as in the future urban zone, already a lot of land live zoned. It could potentially open up land if someone wanted to speculate and get some rural land that is well outside the rural area that's LUC3 and attempt to urbanise it, but that's the only case really where it might make a difference. And our analysis shows that over the past 10 years, it's not been LUC3 land being protected that's been holding up any of the housing development in Auckland.
Yeah, thanks for that. I suppose it just is a wide general question. which provisions introduce greater costs or compliance on council? I think that's one that I'm very interested in. Can you answer that?
Is that a question for me particular in terms of LUC3, or are you talking about the
No, more generally. I mean,
generally?
we've done
Okay.
a huge amount of work. There's a whole lot of detail on this, and Andy, you've probably delved into this a lot more than me, because a lot of this is your kind of stuff. You're from your area, but I'm just, is there anything? I mean, this is really hard here. We're governors around this table about what happens in Auckland. It's a government paper. It's a submission to government. So I'm trying to marry the two, I suppose, and sort of think, is there anything sort of generally? I've got some specific questions which I've posed to you, and you can send me an email later. But is there anything that we should be concerned on that there's more cost or compliance for us that we should be more aware of? I mean, you know, this has been a long day, so.
I, through the chair, if I could answer that one, with regards to the provision to make granny flats permitted activities, that makes it much harder for council to manage the cost of development contributions and manage infrastructure capacity. So there is a kind of a more inefficient gathering of revenue that way. The cost of compliance also relates to the to when more things are being made permitted, we're less able to manage the compliance of those.
Okay, so are we making that clear? Because on one hand, I do get the granny fat things. We've got a housing issue, and I can see what the government's trying to do, getting us, you know, quick fix opportunities for people to find cheaper and more affordable housing, right? I get that. But in our submission, do we tell them, or do we highlight the fact that whilst that is a great thing, on one hand, it does cause us some concern on the other, and how are they looking to mitigate that from our perspective? Do we say that?
Yes, we're quite clear on that.
Okay, I'll leave it there, thanks.
Sorry, can I just add, there's both benefits and, in terms of some savings, in terms of some of the provisions, that there's less regulatory requirements, so therefore there'll be some savings to the council. But on other cases, there'll be more costs because some of the mechanisms are inefficient. So it probably depends on which instrument we're talking about. So just as a general observation.
Yeah, Chair, so I won't speak. I just want to say to you, I think I wouldn't mind have seen a bit of a matrix. You know, this is good. We're into this. This is a bit of a concern. This will be the pluses for us. This will be the minuses. It's a complex paper, and it's at the end of the day. And at some stage, I think a memo back after we've sent it through and see what the government says will be quite useful, just to clarify where we actually end up on this. Because, as you say, there are pluses and minuses, but I can't get my head around if I need to do any lobbying about which bits are up and which bits are down. Yeah. You know, I feel like the hokey tokey, but 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
And thanks, Deputy Mayor. I think part of the issue, once again, is we don't get asked before these very complex changes are put before us, and then the window for the team to do feedback on such complex information, and to try and get local board feedback, and try and get even all the information across, to bring it here for a submission that closes literally in days, is the hardest thing. We wanted to bring it here as opposed to bypassing the committee, because we think that's important, but even to try and get really good have a workshop or anything like that is just not possible under these constraints.
I agree. I think you've done the right thing bringing it here. But I think if my sort of wider input as a council around this table is when we are under the pump time-wise, a simple chart, Megan, just to make it easy. Because I tell you what, there's a hell of a lot of reading to do in here, and I sort of trust you, but I don't really know the implications sometimes of everything.
Yeah, it is really hard, and most of what is being prepared is based on our current plans, policies, decisions for a starter for 6. So, Councillor Baker.
Yeah, just David, I guess more at you and you know the Franklin Local Board put in a pretty detailed submission. How have you been? Have you worked in their submission and their points into our submission? And I guess just in terms of LUC 3, you know, I guess one of the problems that we have is not all areas of soil is equal, and so you might have areas of really good soil, but they're just not usable because they're too steep, they're too wet, whatever, and so they aren't farmed and cannot be farmed productively, and so it sort of goes against that the whole grain of we end up with a mess. So yeah, have you worked that in, and how do we sort of manage that through our submission?
Yes, we've received feedback from local boards, and the full appendice should be uploaded to Nexus now. We had 5 that we incorporated into the submission, but yes, we still have to make changes to the final draft that will be signed off by the delegated approvers, and I think Franklin was one of the ones that met quite recently.
Just to add, so yes, I've been reading all of the local board stuff over the last 48 hours, and particularly taking account of Franklin's views. A lot of them are similar to the themes that we've got. So what I would like to suggest in terms of how we incorporate things is, like, you know, if there's something really important that we've missed out, that we'll probably will include a sentence or something. But otherwise, generally, if they're sort of on the same wavelength, we're just taking that as read.
And I acknowledge that some of the organisations and the expert organisations will be feeding it anyway through a different channel. So that's right.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and I know the Waitakere Rangers Local Board put in fairly decent, based around the heritage area again, but I just wondered, with the rural areas, you know, and stock exclusion, etc., our rural areas have more than just a productive stock consideration. So in the Heritage Area Act, one of the objectives there is to provide for future use of rural land in order to retain the rural character of the area. So the foothills area of the Waitakeres is, you know, Orotia, all those sorts of areas around there, out into Waitakere, etc. There's a ambience there we're trying to protect as well, which is a kind of a different rural ambience than some of the other areas, and that means the use of, or the acceptance of, small blocks, stock exclusion. Sometimes it's just a handful of cows that actually pays the rates and keeps that stuff looking as it is. Are we able to put a sentence in for that to sort of make sure we balance the considerations, all our considerations?
So the position we've landed on as staff is that we're supporting what they call option 4 on the stock exclusion paper, and that is largely retaining our existing kind of coverage of stock exclusion provisions in the Auckland region, because it largely affects the South Island high country and low intensity works. So I think that's still adequate, and I guess it also is tailored. A lot of the stock exclusion provisions are tailored to particular intensive and also different stock types, which is probably, you know, I appreciate you'll have a beefy or two on sort of lifestyle blocks and things. I don't think that's going to be really affected by all our proposals that we're putting forward here, largely again because we're trying to retain pretty much the current situation for Auckland.
I think that's the difference between, you know, it says primary sector there, it's between intensive and, you know, some beefies on a piece of property. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still trying to understand that land use capability charts there. Been paying quite a close attention, and I'm just looking at specific areas that I'm familiar with as it goes to the LUC 1, 2 and 3. And what you said, Dave, is that they were saying those areas in green are productive areas or farming areas that could offer more or better land use. Is that what they're essentially saying?
Yeah, there's a those higher land use classes 1, 2, and 3 offer some good opportunities for multiple land uses. And by removing land use class 3, you're effectively, particularly up north, removing a lot of that protection that would be offered under the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land. So what we're trying to suggest through this proposal is that if government goes ahead with that, you know, there could be some resulting subdivision activities or land use activities that are inconsistent with what we would want to see on such land.
So therefore, we're putting forward just LUC 1 and 2. Is that what we are then putting forward?
So central government is saying they would like to remove land class 3 from the NPS HBL, so that it would only be land class 1 and 2 that would be protected in terms of the HBL.
Okay.
provisions.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is all the questions. I'm happy to move. Seconder, Deputy Chair. Yeah, is there any debate on this? No. All those in favour? Any opposed? No. Thanks very much, officers. Thank you. And thanks for waiting all day.